Hello my friends and welcome back to Player Display. So, as you can see before you, I have the sprues of the very awesome Boba Fett Mandalorian variant model kit, and I was prepping him for some dull coating, and I figured this would be not too bad of an opportunity to throw a little bit of a tutorial together. So basically what I'm going to show you very quickly is just how you can spray up your Bandai sprues, as I tend to call them. So whether you want to change the color, to give them a gloss or a dull coat or whatever you'd like, but for this model kit I'm just going to be doing a dull coat. I guess we had Mandalorian, then Book of Boba Fett. Of course we have the Fett Man repaint his armor with brand new green, red, and all of that. And one of the most notable things about that color palette is everything was very matte. There was no gloss at all to it. But as you can see here on the armor bits, there's a little bit of a shine, so I'm going to want to go ahead and take that away to the best of my ability. And then as for some other parts here, like you have some cloth garments, like here in the black, you've got a little bit here on the brown. So basically what we're going to do is just get a good old can of Krylon Dull Coat and take all that gloss away, or at least attempt to. I'm a little bit amateur at this myself, so it's either going to be a very good tutorial or just a very good example of how to screw a good model kit up. So basically, the first thing you want to do if you're considering doing any spray paint work with a kit at all is first take all the sprues out of their plastic baggies whatever, and immediately reference the instructions. Because as you'll see here, and this is very common with most model kits, is that even though they give you a whole bunch of parts, you're not necessarily going to need all of them. So on this diagram here, we have every sprue that comes with this model kit, and one of the most interesting things about it is it recycles parts from the original Empire Strikes Back model kit, which has kind of been floating around for a lot of years if you ever want to pick that up. So as for the Mandalorian Boba Fett variant, there is of course some new changes. He has some new quote-unquote soft goods, some weapons, new color and stuff like that. So as you can see, there are a lot of extra parts that were used on the old kit that are not being used on the new. So my first recommendation is just taking your time to remove any parts that you don't want dull coated. So for me, the first thing was easy. Just get rid of anything with a big old X going through it, because those are obviously ones that we're not going to need in this kit, and maybe want to save them for future projects. So I clip those out, put them aside, actually just in the lower lid of the bin. You see them all right here. I clip them out little by little, put them aside. We don't need them. So now I can just throw them in my fodder bin. If I ever want them again, I have them. They don't have dull coat or anything, so that means I can do whatever I want with them if I ever need to reference them again. The second thing you want to look out for is any base parts that are meant to be included in this kit being anything that you might not want to be a certain color. So for example, that's where I bring in the lid, where I've stored parts that I don't want to spray right now. So I think a first key example are these little silver bits. These are kind of the little rocket pins that go into the kneecaps, and obviously these are silver. I do not want to make them dull coated because I want them to maintain their shine. I actually might hit them up with silver. I'll have a think about that. But yeah, so that's one example. The second one here is the Tamora Morrison head mold, which looks really cool, but unfortunately, and this is one of my main gripes with this kit, this is not going to be a review, this is merely a tutorial, is that they did not pre-paint the face, which they've done before. Would have been nice if they did that here. So I'm very bad at painting in flesh and skin tones, things of that nature, so I'm going to do my best to do that first. But before I hit this with any kind of spray, obviously I want to remove this so I can play around with my manual acrylic paints, see what I can do. If it comes out like crap, I don't have to worry about it, but if I really like the results, then I can give it a sealer and then bring it back over and then give it some dull coat or whatever it is I want to do with that. And there are just other parts that just really don't need the dull coat. It's kind of just an aesthetic choice. Like, you have the very basic Bandai 101 figure stand that goes with all Star Wars model kits pretty much. And I pretty much never use those, except for usually the little foot base that comes with it being right there. You see that's kind of imprinted to hold the figure in place. And then obviously if you have any soft goods or any stickers, then you're probably not going to want any paint or any coat touching that whatsoever. So basically what I've done at this point is I removed the fodder parts that just have nothing to do with this character whatsoever. I also removed any parts that I don't want to be a certain changed color. I don't want them to be a changed sheen. So like if they're already dull coat or gloss, then I got them out of the picture so they won't be hit by the paint. I also removed the Tamora Morrison head because that's something I want to paint up manually before I hit it with the spray. And I just removed parts that I just didn't feel like needed it, the figure stand mainly. So that leaves us with my second step, now that we've removed all the parts that we don't need, and here we have various sprues kind of just laid out on these pieces of cardboard, which are actually salvage parts from other model kit boxes. And basically what I did here is I essentially prepped them all to basically be hit by the spray, so that way when I pull them out of my little spray box, I'll show you my setup a little bit later, and then I can pull them back out without them shuffling around. So as you can see here, this one is not taped down, and when I move the cardboard around, when I turn this in the box so I can hit the other side, these pieces aren't going to go flying everywhere, know what I mean? And that is because I have a little bit of tape generously applied right there, like the cheapest tape you have. It doesn't have to be anything super fancy, like simple Scotch tape, a little bit of duct tape, masking tape, really whatever it is that you have in the bin. And over here, here's where you notice the difference. Here's some smaller sprues that I cut out. Sometimes there are sprues where like the majority of the parts contained in the sprue were just not even needed. Like you can see here, this sprue was obviously devoted to the old model kit, so I just took out the parts from that I needed, dropped them here, and now that I want to spray them, I'm taping them down to the cardboard. And the reason why I'm taping it is so that way if I want to spin it in the box or move it around, they don't do a whole lot of shuffling up. So I'm going to secure these the way that I've secured these ones here. Like you see, they're not moving or anything. So anyways, let me go ahead. I'm going to seal these ones down a little bit. Again, just basic tape that you could just remove right afterwards. And after I do that, I'll bring you to my little spraying station, and we'll spray like, I think just 2 sprues together. We're not going to go through the whole building process or anything. Again, just to teach you about how to work with sprays if you're a novice to it. I pretty much am too. This is just the method that I use. So anyways, let me wrap up here, and we'll see what we got. Alright, so here we are in my bathroom. I promise you we have not entered a trap from Saw. This is just where I happen to do all my spraying. This is where I break a rule that I recommend to you that I am breaking myself right now. Don't do sprays indoors. I just happen to have a very, very big bathroom with a really excellent air vent up top. If you really need to do any type of spraying indoors, definitely have some ventilation going, because you don't want to breathe this stuff in. It's no fun. Or at least wear a mask or something like that. So anyways, here is our first sprue taped down to the piece of cardboard inside this box, which as you can see I've pretty much designated as my spray box. A whole bunch of kits have gone in and out of this one box. If it ever falls apart, grab a new one and just seal it up at the edges right there where the lips of the box meet, and then you're pretty much good to go. This is pretty much what my station looks like. If I'm doing something that's a little bit heavier or anything having to do with color, that's probably when I take it outside, but it's just a dull coat. It's not going to be visible anywhere in here anyways, so not a big deal at all. Pretty much now that we've removed the parts we don't need and we've taped all the parts that we do need down to the cardboard, that brings us to our third step, which is spraying it up. So here we have some Krylon sealer. As you can see, it specifically says clear right there. Even though it just says sealer, I'm sure you could probably put some more paints on top of it or decals, which I will need to do. Alright, so here's our open can, and you hear that sound? You're not about to play GTA, you are about to spray up your model kit. So obviously, you want to get a fair distance away, I say about a little over a foot pretty much, and we're going to go nice and quick. Krylon applies very quickly. Honestly, it's meant for bigger things like furniture, chairs, you know, just bigger, like the chassis of a model kit car or something like that. But in this case, we're doing very small parts with very tiny, meticulous, sculpted details that we don't want to lose. So we're just going to do a quick little spritz, not too much. I'm just going to go and eyeball this and you'll see the results. So I'm just going to kind of hit the wall there. Again, just a dull coat, not a big deal. Just be sure every piece gets a little bit of attention. Great. You can kind of already see that. Excuse me. Go in a bit, you can kind of already see it's doing its work. It's starting to make it a little bit less shiny, which I really like. But honestly, with this stuff, let it sit. If you feel like that it's not dull coated enough, really just give it some time before you add more coats, because if you overdo it, then it kind of gives it a fuzzy feel that's not really too nice on the hands. I mean, you can always go in and apply more, but really I just give it another 30 seconds and then go back in if you really feel like it just needs a little bit of that extra something. But as I mentioned, the reason why we tape down these sprues is that we can take this piece of cardboard, pull it out, rotate it around, And we're gonna go ahead, lift it by the corner, I suppose, and slot it back in, almost like you're baking cookies. I assume. I've never made cookies. My aunt has. We're gonna do the exact same thing again, just on the other side. Just a few spritzes. I'm gonna wear my mask on the next ones that I do. Basic quarantine mask. It's quite layered, so I have a few options there. Actually, it's been like a minute or two, and you can already see there is a slight difference. So what I'm holding here is one of the fodder pieces that came with the original kit, and when you put it up against the pieces we've just sprayed, you can see that they are a little bit more dull, more like a cloth as they should look. So again, I could probably just go back into this whole sprue and hit it again if I'd like, but for now I think it's just where I need it to be. But it has definitely taken down at least a little bit of the gloss. Again, I don't want to overdo it, but I think this is a fine start. But you can see it is a little bit overdone here on the tunic because it was very exposed, which means it got hit on both passes of the spray instead of just being regulated to those two sides. So that can happen. If you're worried about it, then again, just don't do as many coats as I just did because, again, it's kind of... If you just want to do one go and then be done, maybe that's enough. I'm going to try that on the next sprue over there and see if the results are any different. Alright, so I just hit up a second set of sprues over here. This time I was a little bit lighter on it, and as you can see, it's not quite as heavily dusty looking as the ones over here, which is okay. I mean, he's a bounty hunter, he's rough and tumble, it's okay if it looks like he's a little bit grungy under there, so I'm okay if there's variations across these various sprues, especially since he's supposed to be dull coated throughout, so that's why I thought this would be such a good model kit to experiment on. If something goes a little bit awry, this is probably a character that's worth messing up on. Like, if you mess up a gloss coat on a Darth Vader or something like that, then it's not going to be a happy day, but for Boba Fett, he can go anywhere, does anything, doesn't matter how scrappy he looks, so just fine by me. So as for this next one, I'm going to take a different approach. So this one, again, I kind of went up, down, a little bit. Over here, I kind of just hit like 1, 1, 1, 1, and then rotated it, did the same thing. This time, I'm just going to go top down, like straight down, and see how that looks, see if that's any better, if that just results in a better dull coat that's more lightly applied. And then we'll just kind of compare them and see if there is any difference at all. I'm really not sure. Alright, now with my mask on, let's shake this guy up once again. And we're just going to go from pretty much the top. This is like the jetpack and armor portions. Let's see. Yeah, I think, and you can just go around the back a tad. Yeah, I think that's pretty much the minimum of what you'd want to do to get these dull coated. I don't know, let's see how these turn out. Hopefully they're better than everything else. Again, I don't really mind either way, but let's just see how it goes. One thing I did want to mention is, as you can see, this sprue has all the joints, which means that's where you're going to find it in the elbows, the knees, the wrists, stuff like that. I haven't sprayed those joints before on previous model kits because I feel like it might create a little bit of tension, might make things a little stiff. I'm going to try making it dull coat with everything else so it kind of blends in, but I'm really going to make it a point to not do it too heavily because obviously at the end of the day, I want the model kit to function. So I'm going to go a little lighter on these ones. So let's get our guy out again. Do from the top, I guess. Why not? And a little here. There we go. Very nice. Now, while we let these three dry so we could do a little bit of a comparison, I wanted to first highlight this last little special snowflake here. This is the only thing that I want extra glossy, being the visor. Actually, in this case, instead of being too shiny, I feel like it's not shiny enough. So what I'm going to do with this one is we're going to trade out our dull coat, and instead we have this separated so we can hit it with our gloss coat. One thing that I should say is that whenever you're using a gloss coat or a metallic sheen or anything that's shiny, do not overdo the coats. Definitely be careful about overdoing it, otherwise it can kind of create little air pockets. You kind of just got to trust that when you paint it on, it kind of lathers on, makes a nice silky layer over your part. So that's what we're going to do over here. So I'm just going to hit it like once or twice, and that's about it, because it's such a small piece, right? So let's see. I'm going to get a little bit of distance. Aim. Fire. Okay, so that was more than two, but you get the idea. Alright, so here are all the sprues that we just did together, all actively drawing. I guess I could take my mask off, that's fine, right? You could probably hear me better. So from left to right, we have the most hit with dull coat, and then the least hit, and then we have one gloss coat special snowflake over there. So here is the black sprue that we started with. As you can see, it's a little bit on the fuzzy side, like if we push in a little bit, it kind of gave it a little bit of a texture. Expect that when you're overdoing any type of spray, whether it be gloss coat, dull coat, or color. So that's something to be wary of. That's why it's wise to be cautious, to be a little patient, unlike me, because I'm definitely not that. Over here, I was a little bit lighter on it, and even here you could see that I kind of overdid it on this crotchal region, I suppose. That's probably going to be covered by armor and soft goods anyways, so I'm really not worried about that much at all. Again, I don't care if there's a little bit of variation. Might give him a little bit more character, right? But over here, I think this is where we did best. This is the green. This is where I was like, psst, 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 and then that was pretty much it. Just lightning quick from all angles. Just I think the trick is to apply the spray as minimal as you can from all angles as fast as you can. So that way you can be sure all parts that you want sprayed are hit, and there's not too much of time between each spray, so that way all the coats that you put on kind of join together simultaneously, and then it creates that nice lacquer over each component. And one thing that's worth mentioning is that Bandai is very good, because pretty much there's one surface that will be visible after the final product is built. There's one side that'll be totally invisible. It'll all be on the inside. That's where you get your pegs, your little slots and stuff where everything actually fits together. So basically everything here is face up. We usually, more often than not, don't have to worry about anything on the underside, so that's not going to be a problem for us. As for these ones I was very minimalist, and I actually might want to hit these again. Like, you got some cloth bits right there. That's still a little bit on the glossy side, so I might do these just one more time. So, like, if you can call this 4 different levels, then I'd say the third one, that being the second, the lightest before the most light, would be the way to go. Just like give it a spritz from all angles as fast as you can. That's pretty much what I recommend. This one is a little bit too easy on, and then from second sprue to the first, I feel like I was a little bit too heavy-handed. So just do it quick, get all surfaces as quick as you can, and I think you're good to go. As for this last part over here, again, we have the gloss. I could probably pick it up by a sprue, right? I kind of just sprayed it. It's not quite where I want it to be, so I'm going to go ahead and hit this one more time and see if it's a little bit better. Okay, so I actually caved, and I gave the third sprue we did, which I said was the more recommended level, another coat, but that was after I let it dry for a more considerable amount of time. So maybe I would like to revise my instructions for you. Again, it pretty much stands that when you're going to spray something with at least dull coat, I mean, with other sprays it might be different, you want to spray everything as fast as you can from all angles with as little paint or lacquer as you can. So as for this one, I followed that principle twice over, but I had space in between each instance. So we'll put I'm going to put this kit together and see what it looks like, and we'll also look at the fodder pieces that I extracted previously, so you can actually compare like how well the dull coat functioned in terms of if we apply a lot, if that's where we wanted it to go, or if we applied it as little as possible, if that was a little bit better. I'm really not too sure. Again, this is kind of experimental. Maybe this should have been part of the customizer's journal instead of a straight up tutorial, because a tutorial would imply that I know what I'm doing, but this is more about the setup as opposed to the final results, because I actually have no idea how this is going to look. Alright, so here we are at my table, same evening that I actually sprayed everything up, and I don't have time to put everything together now because unfortunately I've got to do some adulting in the morning, but for now I wanted to assemble the head and torso just to have an idea of what we're working with, and yeah, it kind of worked. There's still a little bit of shine in there. As for the visor though, I think that's where I did my biggest screw up. I got a little bit naive and I kept adding more and more gloss coat, and as a result of that, it just made it dull. So what I basically did is Actually, here's another good material I can recommend. I found these really nice paint pens on Amazon that are really good. You get black, white, silver, and gold, and I find that they're very good for model kits. I've been using them for about a month now, and they serve me well on several projects. They're very good for coloring in some like accents, some shapes I did on the visor here. Good for like some battle damage or just getting into little crevices that you can't really reach. I also did the silver on the rangefinder up there, so that looks really good. It is oil based, so you do want to be a little careful with it. It's a little bit drippy, but if you worked with Molotow chrome pens, then you kind of have an idea of what the experience is like. Although these ones aren't, don't feel like total disappointments. They actually work pretty well, but yeah, I realized the visor got too dull, so I just went over it with one of those markers, and it's got kind of this inconsistency to it, as you can see. Again, that's a result of me overdoing the spray, and it kind of had this overly done texture to it. So I went over it with black. Hopefully it remains glossy, I have no idea, but this is definitely one of those figures that's meant to be held at a distance, and it looks a little bit better. So, honestly, I don't know if the dull coat did anything. Again, it was kind of just an experiment, but whatever. I'm going to put them all together tomorrow, or at some point this week, and we'll just have a little look at him, do a little bit of comparisons with the fodder parts, as I kind of said, and I don't know, we'll see where we wind up. And here we are again, finally, with the kit complete in a more familiar environment. Excuse the mess that's going on. I'm basically recording the finale of this video and a whole brand new review simultaneously, so that's why we got all this clumsiness going on. But then again, it's a tutorial, so it's gonna be a little bit scrapper as we go. But anyways, let's pull up a little bit closely into this Boba Fett. You can see what that dull coat kind of did. I did the accent work with a little bit of paint, a little bit of the markers. I got the decals on there. That's actually a result of the gold markers, so you have an idea of how good that's applied. If you plan on getting those markers, I could put a link in the description. Basically, I recommend putting on a coat, leaving it, going back in some hours later, then doing it once more, and that should pretty much get you what you want. But you can see it's not coming off or anything. It looks really tight, so that's a good alternative for some of the lighter or shinier colors if you'd like to give those markers a try. And one last thing that I did want to do is I will bring in some non-sprayed pieces that we removed from the process so we can kind of get an idea of how they changed as a result of our customizing. So let's get the camera to focus in a little bit on the armor right there. Here is an unsprayed cod piece, and you can definitely see there is a difference in shine. So if we turn this up to the light a little bit, it's kind of, yeah, I guess it's slightly toned down, perhaps not by a ton, but it gave this a little bit of texture, which made it actually look like he spray painted it himself. So it's kind of a happy accident what happened to this figure. I have no real regrets with it. And then I have one more piece over here. This is a leg piece for Boba Fett, I believe, the Empire version anyways. And this would have been down here on the legs. And one thing I like is how the dull coat I used kind of gave it a dusty, worn feel. It looks a little bit stressed. So now you can see over here, it definitely dull coated it, and it made it seem a little bit more dusty compared to the default plastic we got. And the best part about that is it kind of matches it with the soft goods that came with the kit. This is totally unmodified. I didn't trim it or anything like that or replace it with the different soft goods, so now those kind of work better in tandem with each other. So that's pretty much it for that little video we had that I will still need to compile, but basically the lesson here, this is not a true-to-life tutorial because there were still a lot of mistakes going into this. Really, it's less so exactly what you need to be doing and more so just troubleshooting in case something goes awry or it's not exactly what you want, but you can still kind of rule it out with a few little excuses, I suppose. Like, it's not as perfectly dull coat as I wanted it to be, but ultimately what we got, we still have a very clearly refurbished Boba Fett, who still has a little bit of rough and tumble going on with that still spray painted look on the armor and the worn out look on the cloth. So everything I think balances out overall. This is just how I did it. Obviously, if you have any better suggestions, drop it in the description for anyone else who's looking to do something like this. This is not by any means a perfect kit. I am by no means an expert at all, but overall, I mean, I'm pretty pleased with the results. So any tips when it comes to model kits, let the folks know. I think everyone would appreciate that, as would I. So anyhow, if you enjoyed this review, then please, as per usual, be sure to
like,
comment, comment,
and subscribe.
or like a whole bunch of monsters are gonna invade your home, Scoop. Zoinks! Blah. I just realized I said review. Again, it's not a review. It's kind of just a go at it, and then you laugh at me for all the mistakes that I make as we go in. So thank you guys so much for watching. Take care, rock on, and I will see you all later.